really matter. What matters is that you're ready when something bad happens. So today's topic, we're going to talk about first aid. That's something that everybody should have some experience with. You need to have training. You need to have gear. You need to have resources. That is something that is critical. Through P5 Preparedness, we offer a number of classes. You can get certified in first aid, CPR, and using an AED. That is the National Safety Council training. You can call the store to sign up for those classes. And we also have a number of other resources that we use. We do kind of a modified wilderness first aid that'll teach you a lot of different skills that's very important for you to know. We are offering a basic first aid class this Saturday. That's February 11th, and it's from 1 to 5. The cost is $50. And this goes beyond what you're going to need. You know, it goes beyond the Band-Aids. It goes into some more of the trauma stuff. We're not going to teach you how to do, sutures, but there are going to be a number of things that you're going to learn that you won't learn in a regular first aid class. And with me today, I've got Dr. David Powers. He is very skilled in a number of things. Good morning, David.
Hey, how you doing?
It's a great day. It's nice and sunny. The weather is getting a little bit sunny just in time for us to go out and get some chores done before the bad weather comes back on Monday. So we'll see what happens on that. This show is sponsored by P5 Preparedness. We're located on East Brainerd Road between Gun Barrel and I-75, right off of exit 3. Come up from the interstate and you'll see the big Army Deuce and a Half truck parked outside. You can call us at 423-602-2175, or you can email us at info@p5preparedness.com. And then, of course, the website is p5preparedness.com. So a couple of things. I always like to start out with a couple of little tidbits. I always start out with the Baltic Dry Index because I think that's an important metric to see how international shipping is going. And these are the big containers, and they bring the goods over to the United States, mostly from China. And why is the Baltic Dry Index important? Because it shows what the shipping rates are. And the shipping rates will determine how much goods are coming over. The Baltic Dry Index has been dropping very steadily. Back in 2008, right before the downturn in the economy, the recession that we still haven't come out of, it got down to about 508. And that was, at that point, the record. And the experts were saying if it ever got below 500, that there would be serious economic implications. Well, it went back up, but over the last year, it's dropped back down significantly. And in December, we dropped below that key $500 point. It's dropped for about 38 of the 42 days this year, and now it's down to 290. It was at 303 last Thursday, and it's down 40% since January 1st. As those rates are dropping, that means goods are not being shipped, which means shortages. So you need to start thinking about the things that may be hard to get. Most of our goods that you might buy at the big box stores or the department stores, that comes from China. So if you're buying those kind of products, you might want to think about getting some of those products to put back for a little bit. A quick life hack. Life hacks are just things that might make your job a little easier. If you have a gallon jug of water, it needs to be a clear jug. I know a lot of the milk jugs are opaque. You can't see through them. It needs to be a clear jug. If you want to lighten the room and you only have one kind of flashlight, maybe it's a headlight, you can strap that headlamp on that 1 gallon jug and you'll be able to see in that room. It'll make a pretty bright lantern. And then every Thursday at 6:45 to 9 p.m. at the store at P5 Preparedness, we have our network meeting. And tonight, the topic is going to be a review of the P5 Preparedness campout that we went on last weekend. We had about 16 people go with us out into the woods. And that was a great opportunity for those folks to practice either using their bug out bag or other camping gear. And so even if you didn't participate in that campout, you're going to hear some important feedback on things that could make your life a lot simpler when it comes to camping. So as we move into first aid discussion, I want to tell you a little bit about Dr. David Powers. He's got a lot of nicknames. Redbeard is a good one. Doc Beaker is another one. And you've got to check out his bio. And he's one of these guys that has multiple skills. He can help you in many different ways. And his doctor status, the PhD, is not in medicine. It's in something else. And we'll let him talk about that. But David is a cultural architect, combining the worlds of futurist, informationist, and counselor into one. He's a human puzzle master. He has a penchant for assembling random bits and bytes into workable solutions. He's a best-selling author in the area of cognitive psychology, experimental education theory, and martial arts. He's a decorated veteran of the Marine Corps, the Army, and he's also a founding member of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. He's a professional model, a professional actor. He's appeared in films, fashion shows, and even comic books. He's married and the proud father of 3 feral boys and 1 princess. He and his wife homeschool that brood. His mission in life is to find the magical best mug of coffee in the world. He's also a coffee blogger, gives lots of reviews of coffee. So if you're out there, he loves coffee, send him some free coffee and he'll send you a review. Check him out at drdavidpowers.com. That's just one of his websites. So David, why don't you tell us a little bit about your medical background?
Okay. I got started as a teenager. I went into the Marines, and when I came out of the Marines, I went into the medical field. And no way in the world I wanted to go in the Navy after having been in the Marines. So I went Army, which, as you know, Duke, is the next best thing to the Marines, right?
Sort of. We won't get into that.
yeah, we'll keep that off the air. But I went into the medical field at that time as a combat medic, and from there transitioned to the civilian world as a civilian paramedic. And then from there, after working on an ambulance for a few years, I started working for the feds with Homeland Security, worked on a DMAT team, which a DMAT is a disaster medical assistance team. And so basically what we would do is huge disasters, whether man-made or natural, we would deploy a small team as quick as we could and set up field hospitals, similar to what a lot of people would be familiar with on the MASH television show, except way more high-tech than that. And so we would deploy and be there for weeks at a time, just doing medical stuff.
That's awesome. What would you say is the most important bit of training that you've had?
Oh, basic first aid. I always go back to that. That's what's going to keep you alive until more definitive medical care can get there.
Okay. What would you say is the most important people to learn from as a skill if you can't count on medical care getting there?
Okay. If you can't count on medical care, I would always say just stopping the bleeding. Stopping the bleeding will keep you alive long enough, usually until you can get to the medical care, if for some reason they're not coming to you.
What do you think about tourniquet use?
Oh, I love tourniquets, and that may sound weird, but being in the medical field, you understand. Because in EMS on the civilian trucks, they would give us tourniquets and then say, no, we can't trust you with those, and take them away. But as a person on my own, that one single thing can keep you alive sometimes. If you've been in an automobile accident, if you... like the new movie with DiCaprio in it, if you've been mauled by a bear while you're out hiking, I mean, that's a tourniquet's going to save your life.
So you can either buy a tourniquet or you can make a tourniquet, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can buy one. P5 stocks several different kinds. And so you can buy tourniquets there. I mean, or in a pinch, I mean, you make one out of a stick and a belt.
Yeah, David and I were talking about this a little bit earlier about the important use of tourniquets. And there's one segment of the population that I think should always have one on their vehicle, and that's motorcycle riders. You never know when you're going to be out there on the bike and you're going to get clipped by a car or hit a guardrail. And there's been numerous accidents that I've seen or read about where the motorcycle guy was in an accident and he bled out because he had a severed limb. It's, I hate to say common, but it's one of the injuries, the traumatic injuries that happens with motorcycles is severe injuries to the lower legs. Have you, in your experience, David, have you had those kind of incidents?
Oh, absolutely. I used to live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and we had the bike weeks down there. And one of the more common injuries would be a wreck. And when they go over the handlebars and fly off the bike, they break both femurs on the handlebars. And the femurs, the big bone in the upper leg. And if you have an open fracture of the femur, I mean, you bleed to death in under a minute. And a tourniquet would absolutely save your life before the ambulance gets there.
So you're teaching the class this weekend at P5, correct?
Yes, sir. Yep.
And so what are some of the things you're going to cover in that class?
We cover a lot of things from the basic first aid. I mean, we cover things like how to wrap an injury, how to immobilize a broken bone, how to tie a sling. A lot of people surprisingly don't know how to tie slings. And so we'll cover the basics. And one of the things I really like doing is not just covering it, but practicing. And so we'll actually do a few fun little scenarios where we'll simulate injuries and train them how to do that. And then also we'll cover other items like security, how to provide security while somebody else in your group is treating someone. And that's, from armed aggressors or, animals, number of things.
And you do cover tourniquet use in that class, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, that's really important. You can get them there at the store. You can practice with the one that you would use. And so you're going to learn a lot of really critical skills. And at P5 Preparedness, we have a lot of gear, a lot of supplies for your first aid kit that goes beyond what you're going to pick up at the big box store or something like that. And you can get, Band-Aids and ace bandages and things like that just about anywhere. But some of the harder to get items, the things that could make the difference between saving a life and because we're for preparedness, we want to help you deal with emergencies when that ambulance may not be available. And so you learn skills from us that would go beyond just the basic first aid. And no, I'm not talking about surgery, but if you cut your finger, you can use Steri-strips or something to close that wound. But, when you go to the doctor, they give you stuff for that wound. They may give you an antibiotic for infection. They may give you some Neosporin or some kind of triple antibiotic ointment where you have to maintain that injury for a period of time. And just because you're injured and you treat it right there, that doesn't mean that's the end of the problem. That could go on. There are a lot of times when you get a blister on your foot, and when you're in preparedness or survival, you are going to be walking, and you need to know how to treat those blisters because you don't have the option of laying up on the couch for 3 days with a blister, but you need to be able to take care of that. You have to keep going. And so at P5 Preparedness, those are the skills that we're going to teach you. We're going to teach you, yes, how to put a Band-Aid on, how to put triple antibiotic ointment on, but we're going to go beyond that, where if you have an illness or an injury that is beyond just medicine cabinet type stuff, those are the important skills that we're going to learn. And when you are in a disaster, that is some of the things when you are most vulnerable to injuries or illness type things. And as David and I were talking, through his DMAT team, he was deployed during Hurricane Katrina down to the Gulf Coast. So David, tell us a little bit about that experience. So Katrina happened, and then how long after Katrina happened was it before you were deployed? Was it 2 hours? Was it a day?
No. They talked about it within minutes and then waited several weeks. It was several weeks before my team deployed to New Orleans.
And when you got there, how many government medical teams were already there?
The bad thing is there were a lot of them there, but few that were working. Things were so messed up from the bureaucratic standpoint that they had plenty of people there to do the work, but we didn't have the equipment, or they had us in a hotel, sitting in a hotel.
Yep. And that's one of the things with preparedness that we want to help you with. You need to be able to take care of yourself for a period of time. It might be a day. It might be a couple of days. For some of the people that were in that area of New Orleans, it was several weeks before they saw a doctor. And David, what were some of the injuries or the things that you were dealing with down there?
It was crazy things. Everything from animal bites to what people don't think about when all that water came in. Spiders came out of the woodwork. So we saw a lot of venomous snake bites, venomous spider bites. I worked in an area where a gas refinery had been overrun by the floodwaters. And so basically the ground was toxic. I mean, it was a mess.
So if you're dealing with toxic issues, was that maybe chemical burns or something that you're dealing with?
And not only chemical burns, but you're trying to work on your house. You're trying to clear some things out to get to food or clothes. If you scratch yourself, a simple scratch in a toxic environment like that, and you could be down for weeks or possibly life-threatening.
So you'd be susceptible to infection in those cases.
Yep.
And so how do you treat something like that? If you get a scratch and you can't get to the doctor and it starts getting red beyond just from the scratch itself, it looks like it's getting infection. How can you tell if it's infected, and how would you treat that?
Well, easy way to tell, just red, it gets hot to the touch. You'll show a fever. I mean, those are the really simple ways to tell. Just a simple scratch that keeps getting worse and worse and the redness spreads, it needs definitive treatment. And most of the time that's going to be antibiotics. That's all that's going to fix it.
Is there anything you can put on it to maybe keep it from getting infected?
Yeah, I mean, Neosporin would be the basic, just a triple antibiotic ointment, and do that early and often.
So you say often, maybe 3 or 4 times a day?
Oh, yeah. And anytime you change that bandage, put some more.
Well, that's good to know. And David said a key thing right there about treating the wound. You put Neosporin on it, but then you got to put a new bandage on it. And if you have any kind of cut that you're not able to suture right away, you're going to be changing those bandages quite often, because the bandage, the gauze that you're going to put on that is going to need to be changed. You want to keep that wound dry. Dried blood, if that bandage dries to the wound, if you go to pull that bandage off, you may end up ripping the scab off. You may open that wound up yet again. And so having lots of gauze is something that's important for something like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you don't have gauze, basically what you're doing is using dirty T-shirts and things of that nature.
Okay. And so what are some of the things you talked about? Animals. What kind of animals did you have there?
Well, there were lots of wild dogs anyway in that area. And, all the pets that were left behind, they were rampaging around. I mean, we would hear gunshots all night long in the camp.
All right. We've got a caller here calling in. Hello. You're on Hot News Talk Radio. Go ahead, caller.
Great show, great information. I do have a question about pets, but before then, let's go back to Katrina. Did not the federal government delay their entry into the area because the state had to ask for their help, which the state delayed in helping and asking for the help, especially even though they knew that the storm was coming their way? I also wanted to know if you had any information on the gun confiscation in that area, how the feds were doing that, the disorganization of FEMA, and how they corral people into a stadium like sheep. And then my next question is, I want you to comment on that. What happens with your dog or your cat? Because that's your family member. So in case there's a disaster, do you have techniques to help save your dog or cat, or things that you can pack away when you bring them with you to ensure their survival too? Good show, thanks.
All right, thank you, caller.
Oh, those are some really great questions. And absolutely, there was a breakdown from from basically what I would consider the state level on up. Locally at the county level and below, those guys were on the ball and doing the best they could. But the response from state and federal was horrible. That was what led to a lot of the problems with the deployments there. As far as keeping the pets safe, I would always recommend prep for your pets the same way you prep for you. Bedding, food, water, things of that nature. And in a situation like that, you definitely don't want to leave your pet behind, but also your pet, most of the pets will add an extra safety measure to you as far as security. Always be prepared to take them with you. The trouble is a lot of shelters in hurricane areas won't accept pets. And so that's something you'll have to be aware of beforehand, is where can I go if I'm taking my pet with me, or will I be on my own?
One thing that I did when I lived in a little bit of hurricane country, I lived in Savannah, Georgia for a number of years. And if I knew there was a hurricane coming, and I knew that I was going to be having to leave if the area was evacuated, I would find a certain hotel. It was about 100 miles up I-16 from Savannah. And that was one of the few pets within about 60 miles. I'm sorry, one of the few hotels within about 60 miles that accepted pets. And so for the case of the hurricanes, I knew it was coming. I would make a 10-day reservation at the hotel, and then I would cancel it beforehand. It was not a problem. So there's a lot of things that you can do for preparedness. First aid is one of the keys to it. And after the break, we'll come back and we'll talk more about training, about the basic training that you can get and the things that you need to help keep you prepared. This is the Patriot Prepper Show on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We'll be back after the break.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds. We'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Are you prepared? Do you have an emergency plan? Do you have the skills and mindset to survive a disaster? Now is the time to come to P5 Preparedness. We offer preparedness classes, supplies, and over 30 years of combined knowledge. P5 Preparedness, located on East Raynard Road between I-75 and Gun Barrel. Look for the big Army truck. Call us at 423-602-2175. Do not wait. You need to get prepared today. Nobody knows what tomorrow holds. Get the skills and supplies you need or die waiting for help. P5 Preparedness.
Lay your burdens down at the Woodhouse. Leave all your worries at the door. The perfect gift for the perfect night. Surprise her with a Woodhouse gift card. Call us today at 423-443-4478 or visit us online at chattanooga.woodhousespas.com.
Hello, I'm Mike Little, candidate for criminal court judge with 25 years of criminal court experience, which makes me the most qualified candidate. The experience I have gained from handling over 4,000 cases in state and federal court has equipped me with the ability to be fair, impartial, and independent. As your next criminal court judge, I will focus on keeping Hamilton County safe. I view this position as a public service and will strive to improve the daily operation of the court. I humbly ask for your trust and vote in the March 1st Republican primary.
Paid for by the committee to elect Mike Little, Barry Abbott, Treasurer.
On your signature, you can get $150,000. Can you believe that? $150,000 on your signature. Hi, I'm Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. There's a program right now that you can get $150,000 on your signature with no pledge of collateral or personal guarantee. Call me at 423-875-5621 to learn more. 423-875-5621. You've been thinking about starting a business and becoming self-sufficient. Don't do it on your own. I have a proven track record for the last 13 years, a 96% success rate. I can guide you into a franchise where you will pay yourself through the startup phase with very low or little risk. Call me now. I'm Bruce Krebs at 423-875-5621. 875-5621. And make sure to listen to the Entrepreneur Hour every other Wednesday from 11 to 12 o'clock here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Call me now, 875-5621.
What are you going to get your sweetie for Valentine's Day? I'm going to Carter Shooting Supply.
Carter Shooting Supply.
That's right, Carter Shooting Supply. They're having a great sale on all of their guns right now, and it's name brands like Smith & Wesson, Ruger, Springfield, their AR-15s. They've got the hottest gun in the land right now, the Sky 9mm. Man, it comes in all the cool colors. If you're an Alabama fan, they've got crimson. If you're a big orange fan, they've got an orange one. You know, all the women are loving the pink one and Tiffany blue. Plus, it has a lifetime warranty replacement. If the gun is stolen, all you need is your police report or receipt, and they'll replace it free. It has a 60-day full money-back guarantee. That's Carter Shooting Supply. They're in Harrison right there at 6210 Highway 58.
Are they online?
Yes, they are. That's cartershootingsupply.com, or give them a call, 423-344-1099. Now, this sale's not going to last too long, so you need to hurry up and get there. And they do have a great indoor shooting facility. You can get your Tennessee handgun carry permit also. That's Carter Shooting Supply, 423-344-1099.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. A 60-year-old woman, Nancy Mason, is suing the county and the city for a combined $1.75 million after she says she was wrongfully tased for refusing to take off her earrings while being processed at a jail. The woman says that when she was tased, she fell down and broke her arm. She was taken to the hospital and then taken back to the jail for a mugshot. Chattanooga police say a woman's estranged husband tried to run her over while she was holding her young daughter. The victim reported having to run between cars to avoid being hit. She told police that the estranged husband kept trying to run her over, even though she was holding her young child. The victim said that her husband had assaulted her many times in the past and no longer lived with her. He's been placed on $15,000 bond for aggravated assault and $10,000 bond for reckless endangerment. And principals in Hamilton County are saying that Part 1 of TN-Ready testing should be cut due to the online system's failure. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Looking good out there through the afternoon with lots of sunshine. A little warmer, too. Highs 43 to 45 tonight. Lows into the upper 20s with a few clouds. For Friday, partly cloudy, highs 50 to 52, but turning much colder Friday night into Saturday with highs dropping into the 30s. As an entrepreneur, you're always on the phone. Turn your mobile phone into a business phone with Grasshopper, the entrepreneur's phone system. Get a local or toll-free number. For more, grasshopper.com. And I'm S'mores 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
When the weather turns bad, turn to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. On the net, hotnewstalkradio.com. Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. From the Hot News Talk Radio Weather Center. Chattanooga, we've got you covered. When the weather turns bad, the Tennessee Valley turns to Hot News Talk Radio.
Go, 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 go.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
This is the Patriot Prepper Show, sponsored by P5 Preparedness. We're here to help you get prepared for any disaster, any situation that may be coming in any form of an emergency. P5 Preparedness is located on East Brainerd Road between I-75 and Gun Barrel Road, and look for the big green Army deuce-and-a-half truck that's parked out front. We offer a number of classes, and you can find out what those classes are by visiting our website or also by following us on Facebook. P5 Preparedness is open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Our website is p5preparedness.com. Our phone number is 423-602-2175, 602-2175. So one thing that the caller in the last segment asked about, it concerned the response from the government on Hurricane Katrina, and the question was about gun confiscation. David, you were there. Why don't you address that one?
Oh, yeah. That was definitely happening, both on the civilian side and the federal side. On the civilian side, they were trying to take guns away from anybody that had them. And you're talking about people protecting their homes, not people out rampaging on the streets or in gangs. We're talking about ordinary people like you and me just trying to protect, life and home. On the federal side, there were DMAT teams that deployed or typically deploy with their own law enforcement personnel. And we're talking trained full-time law enforcement. The feds basically said, we'd love for you to come and provide security for your team, but leave your guns at home or don't come.
Why do you think they were doing that?
It's an issue of control. They wanted total, complete control. And the weird thing was they told those guys to leave their guns at home, and then they hired Blackwater to provide security for our sites and our pharmacies.
So Blackwater is a defense contractor that they've had some controversy themselves. They do a lot of the special missions, the special guarding of people over in foreign nations like Afghanistan, Iraq, and they will even protect our foreign dignitaries. But I guess we won't get into the politics behind that. But David, we've talked a little bit about your medical background. What are some of the other things that you do? I know you do a lot of training. You just got back from Milwaukee. What are some of the training things that you do outside of medical, first aid, paramedic type training?
Oh, yeah. Actually, my full-time job now is counseling. Kind of as a joke, I used to tell people now that I used to work on bodies. Now I get paid to work on heads or mess with heads. But I do counseling, and basically that was an outgrowth of my own experience in the medical field. I realized that most of my friends in public safety and also in the military were coming back with problems. And who better to help them than somebody that's been through exactly what they've been through?
And dealing with some of those problems, would that be trauma that you witnessed as either a paramedic or in the service?
Oh, absolutely. Trauma, and then the resulting PTSD, traumatic brain injuries that cause certain issues to happen. Yeah.
So can you talk about some of the issues or the things that you witnessed, some of the traumatic things that you saw?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the worst is always somebody that you know. Being close to someone that's been killed or injured, or in the military, sometimes it's almost as bad to have a friend that's hurt so bad that they can't come back. All they want to do is serve and help, but they're sent home and then pushed into that VA system that we hear so much about the problems with.
What are some of the trauma issues that you dealt with where the wounded person did survive?
Well, loss of limb is always one of the worst because, a lot of trauma can be treated. There are issues associated with it, but a loss of limb is something you will never completely recover from. It's a new normal that you have to find ways to work around in your life.
What would you say are some of the techniques that people can do to deal with those things emotionally? In other words, one of the things that I talk about is mindset. Mm-hmm. You have to be in a mindset where you are dealing with different things. And I used to be an EMT many years ago, and it was, if I was going to a car accident, I would have time to go. I would think through my mind about what to experience. That was easier for me to deal with instead of hearing my child screaming outside and go out and find that, his foot is all red with blood and he's, stubbed his toe.
Yeah.
So what are some things that you can do to help with the mindset or help to prepare yourself mentally for those kind of challenges?
Well, to be honest with you, it may seem a little odd, but one of the biggest things I tell people to help, because I do a lot of work with cumulative stress, basically just the stress that builds up. And I always tell people the better prepared you can be with having margin in your life, just some margin to be able to think to where you're not constantly stressed out, the better you're able to deal with a traumatic situation.
Talk a little bit about margin. What do you mean by margin exactly?
Well, margin, like most of us, and me, the listeners, we have our lives are so busy that there's no room for anything. If you get a flat on the way somewhere, you're running late because you don't have any margin with time. You don't have time to relax. You don't have time to spend quality time with your spouse or your kids. And when something bad happens, it makes all that just all of a sudden come to the top.
Well, that's good advice, I think. How can I learn to get that margin? Is it just a matter of time, leaving work early an extra 5 minutes, or is there something else that I can do? Some people don't like to deal with blood. They may faint when they see blood or something. Is there a way that a person could overcome that? Or as an example, if you are a mom or a dad and you won't deal with blood, if it's your own blood, but what if it's your child's blood and you have to deal with it? Is there a way, is there something you can do to help you be able to approach that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, certainly. I mean, the one way is, of course, to be around it more. The more you're around something, and I don't mean in a video game or watching it on TV sense, but the more you're around something, like if you wanted to volunteer for a local rescue squad or a fire department or the state guard, I mean, those are excellent ways to become more accustomed to emergencies. The other thing is just if you're in a situation where it's one of your kids or somebody you have to steel your mind to know that it's only you that's there to help them, and that they're waiting on you. There's no one else there. And so that's kind of a lot of people will use that kind of a mental effect to get past the situation long enough to deal with it and then freak out afterwards.
Yeah, good point. Good point. With the training that you've got coming up, we talked very briefly about the training that people are going to learn, the things that they're going to learn about. But let's change a little bit from the training to the supplies, the equipment, the gear. Let's talk about things that would go into a basic first aid kit and then kind of an enhanced first aid kit, the extra things that you should have maybe in your car if you think you may go to a car accident or something similar to that. What would you put in your bag?
Okay. Well, you always start with the what we call an IFAC, an individual first aid kit. And this is basically your kit. It's not for somebody else. It's for you. If you have to deliver self-care or hand it to somebody to apply to you. The basics for that are just the life-threatening things, things to stop bleeding, like a tourniquet, gauze. I keep things like Band-Aids and of that nature in there for the individual stuff. And I carry that thing everywhere. When I'm hiking, I keep one in my car. I mean, anytime I'm somewhere I think something may happen and I might need help, I carry that with me. Beyond that, I mean, I've got 4 kids, and so I keep a well-stocked first aid kit in the car, in the house. We've got several cars, so there's one in each. And if anything happens from, a splinter that they need a Band-Aid for to something more traumatic that I can treat before an ambulance gets there, you've got to have that.
So in the IFAC, the individual first aid kit, you would have gauze in there, obviously, if you have something traumatic. What about how much gauze? Are you going to have a lot? How big is this individual first aid kit?
It's small enough to fit in a big Ziploc bag. I mean, you can put a good one in there. In a big Ziploc bag, I've got several, like 4x4s as far as gauze. I've got the gauze rolls that you can wrap around that. I've got a few trauma bandages, which basically amounts to really thick gauze. And I mean, you can even use feminine products for those kinds of things because they're absorbent. And I keep tape in there, a SAM splint. That's something I love. That's really multi-purpose. And definitely a tourniquet, because if I'm in a serious situation, I have a tourniquet in there that I can apply myself, and that will keep me until the ambulance gets there.
Yeah. And you should also put some smaller items in there, Band-Aids of a few different sizes. They have individual packs of things like alcohol wipes for cleaning the wound before you work on it, betadine, triple antibiotic ointment, some of those things, because again, it's to treat you. It is aimed at more of the traumatic type stuff, but you can also treat the smaller things there as well. And one thing that I always would like people to have in there, if you have, because remember, you're going to be out somewhere, and a lot of times when you're out in the woods or something, you may get stranded in an area. So you may want to have maybe a day's worth of your prescription medications, things that you really would be hurting if you were without. Some people are on, blood pressure medication or heart medication. Really, those kind of things. If your life is going to possibly be affected if you go a certain period of time without that medication, I would put that medication in there as well.
Oh yeah.
And then things like, definitely if you have allergies, maybe you put the EpiPen in there. But things like Benadryl, Tylenol, Advil, Benadryl, maybe some stomach acid. I'm getting on a tangent here, but those are kind of things that are small enough that you could put a couple of doses in there that wouldn't take up a lot of room.
Yeah. And the idea for me is that in IFAC, your personal first aid kit, it serves several purposes. Number one, for me, it's either to prevent me from having to go to medical care. I'll treat it myself with what I've got, or it keeps me alive until definitive care gets to me.
Let's move up from the individual first aid kit to maybe what would we need for a family or something?
Yeah. Oh, a family first aid kit. I mean, all the normal stuff. I mean, to sum it up quickly and then I'll expand, but all the normal stuff plus anything your family gets into. My family is really outdoorsy, and so we keep a lot more of the outdoor, like, things for insect bites, the EpiPen type stuff, the Benadryls, bug spray, things of that nature to keep us away from what we're getting into the most. But it's a beefed up version also of your IFAC. More gauze, more SAM splints, cravats, which are basically, a big bandana so that you can make a sling out of that. I even keep a few, aside from the SAM splint, I keep a few hard splints, like just small pieces of wood in there. And I mean, I can immobilize pretty much anything. Or if the kids misbehave, I can tie them to a tree.
So what's a SAM splint?
A SAM splint, it's SAM. It stands for splint aluminum malleable. It's basically a piece of aluminum. It's an aluminum sheet that's covered in foam. And you can roll it up. You can mold it into just about any shape. I mean, you can make anything from a long bone splint to a neck collar from these. And they're really cheap and reusable.
They are, I wouldn't say cheap, I would say inexpensive, but they run about $15. And sometimes in a first aid kit, that $15, people may say, well, I probably don't need that. Well, if you have a broken arm, a broken ankle, something like that, that is about the best thing that you can have to splint that wound. The old thing about using 2 sticks, tying them together or something like that, that might work. But the thing with this SAM splint is, as David said, it's malleable, it's bendable. So you can bend it to shape it to that broken forearm. And believe me, when you have somebody that has a broken arm, broken leg, something like that, you want it to be as immobile as possible, because that's one of the most painful things that a person can experience. And that $15 SAM splint is really it's irreplaceable. That there's really nothing else that is going to be comfortable enough for you to treat that person. One of the things that I want to go a little bit off of the first aid kit, but it has to do with first aid items. There may be items that you want to put in your first aid kit that you may not have the skills to use, but there may be a medical doctor or somebody else that is available there that can use that. And so, you may not know how to use sutures, but those are somewhat inexpensive and they take up practically no room in a first aid kit. And there are certain wounds that really you can only get closed properly with sutures. So that's something that I would say to put in there. And again, you may not have the skills to use it. And by all means, if you don't have the skills, don't use something. Don't do a tracheotomy on the side of the highway because you saw it on TV. If you're not a licensed medical person, you cannot go above the level of training that you've had and you've been certified to. So when you come to P5 preparedness and take the medical class, what we're teaching you are skills that would be appropriate in an off-grid scenario. If there's a collapse of society, or if you're so deep in the woods that nothing else will help, these are the skills that you will learn that can help keep you alive. And we're having this first aid class. It's a basic first aid class. It's this Saturday from 1 to 5. It's $50. And believe me, that is going to be well worth the money because you're going to get a lot of skills and experience that you're not going to get in any other first aid class. The address, if you want to look up information about the store, the email address is info@p5preparedness.com. The website is, again, p5preparedness.com, and you can learn about this class on Facebook. And we really need you to sign up. Spaces are limited, and you need to be there. And so please come to the class this Saturday. The address for the store is 1309 Panorama Drive. And that's for you all that are using the GPSs. And it's on East Brainerd Road. It's at the corner of East Brainerd and Panorama Drive. But again, it's on East Brainerd Road between Gun Barrel and I-75 exit 3. So come by the store. We've got a lot of supplies, and David's going to go in a little bit more about the home supplies, and he'll also talk about where are some good places to get the supplies that you're going to need. So David, can you continue through that first aid kit you were talking about? We talked about the SAM splint, and you mentioned the cravat, which is more like a triangle bandage. Yeah, you can make a sling out of that. You can use that as a blood stopper or something like that. What are some other things that you would want in your first aid kit?
Well, like you said, being prepared for more extensive situations like sutures, things of that nature. I do a lot of expeditions. I do a lot of mountain climbing. And so we'll be out for a very long time. And, it's a long way to medical care when you're out on a mountain. And so we always try to have more than we need. Another thing people need to consider is an AED or training in CPR. I mean, both of those are absolutely necessary. I've trained, since I teach the classes, I've trained all my kids, even down to my 4-year-old, how to do CPR, how to use an AED. And the really neat thing is that when we go to places like the mall or an airport, my kids are zeroing in on they'll see an AED on the wall and they'll point it out to me. Most adults don't know where the AEDs are in public places, but my kids do. And so knowing how to use those is very important.
Very important. It can save a life. And, a lot of people that are into preparedness, a lot of preppers are not in the greatest of shape. And if you're going to all of a sudden be hiking, that's a risk that you would have. So you want to get in shape and you want to have the skills that you need. We do have the first aid CPR AED class at P5 Preparedness. You would get the National Safety Council certification through that. Just call the store and we will work through you or we'll give you the training that you need on that. We'll give you the information over the phone and how to sign up for that class. David, talk about where you can get first aid equipment.
Well, like I said, you've mentioned several times, P5 for me is one of the best places. Mainly because I know I can go there and buy something and talk to an expert about it. Like the SAM splint, most people buy those and they never unwrap them. And so just go buy it, unwrap it, ask Seth or one of the guys at P5 to show you how to make a few things out of that. And it's a great place to buy. You can buy things at Walmart and places like that, but nobody there is going to help you learn how to use it. Nobody there is going to help you pack a first aid kit. And so I always recommend buy from a place where somebody can show you how to use it, show you how to pack it, explain what it's for.
That's really the key is we're a small business. You can buy things at other places, but you're not going to get the customer care. If you go to the big box store, they're going to point to you on the aisle and tell you where it is, but you're not going to get much information off the box. A lot of places you're going to get that information is from somebody that has know-how. At P5 Preparedness, we practice with the equipment that we have. We're very knowledgeable. We carry really the gear that we are comfortable with carrying and using and putting our lives at risk. When it comes to water filters, we sell a couple different brands of water filters. We sell the Sawyer products and the Berkey products. And those are ones that we're very comfortable with. There are some that are more of the straw variety of water filter that we don't recommend. You don't get your money's worth from it. And we know lots of people that have gotten giardia or other stomach ailments from drinking contaminated water through a filter that didn't work. Through the Sawyer products, we've never had any issues with those kind of problems. And practicing is some of the things that you need to do. And practice is key. You need to get your family in on this. If you have a spouse, if you're the man of the house listening, you are more susceptible to a heart attack than the wife or the girlfriend. And so by you having all the skills, that isn't necessarily going to save your life. If you cut your foot, cut your leg, you can bandage that yourself. But if you have a heart attack, that's very, very difficult for you to treat yourself. So in addition to, we've talked about skills, we've talked about gear, we've talked about training. There are other things that are important to have, and that is books. That is reading material, places to learn. David, do you have any books or anything that you would recommend, or other things outside of just the classroom training that you recommend?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are several books I have on hand. Emergency War Surgery is definitely one. Where There Is No Doctor, and also another one in that series, Where There Is No Dentist. One thing about, especially a grid down situation, a dental problem is going to drive you absolutely insane. It may not be life-threatening at first, but it will drive you crazy. So Where There Is No Dentist. And also there's another book called A Book for Midwives. I know how to deliver a baby. I've done it several times, but most people, that is a situation that will scare them to death. And so, always have reference books on hand, especially for things that you haven't ever done or, a little sketchy on your training.
Yeah, those are great things to talk about because, hey, delivering a baby, when it's ready to come, it's coming, and you can't put it off. You can't just ignore that situation. But that's something that is a skill that I don't want to say it's easy because it's not. It's not something just anybody can do. But it's easy enough in an emergency situation that you can make the scenario a whole lot better if you have a little bit of gear. And you can get a small obstetric kit that's made especially for delivering babies. And if you have the know-how, if you have a little bit of experience, that would go a long way in a disaster emergency scenario. I would always 100% of the time recommend a hospital or professional doctor for taking care of those kind of things. But you don't always have that opportunity. And Where There Is No Doctor, that will go a little bit beyond just the first aid. That is made for people that are like missionaries going overseas and treating people literally where there is no doctor. And they have a lot of experience with those kind of things. And, we live in a first world area where obviously we've got medical attention. There's a lot of things medically that we don't have to deal with. But overseas, people deal with parasites. They deal with illnesses that we don't have to face. And an example, we've got the Zika virus that is popping up in South America and Brazil in a huge way. And we're starting to see cases of it in the United States. I believe the cases in the United States are from travelers coming back from South America and other places. But the point is, they're bringing illnesses that are with them. And if you're in a disaster and you're in an unclean area, you could start seeing some of those type places, some of those illnesses, diseases that are coming back that we really only hear about that are overseas. And so having reference material is very important. Having a good kit is very important. Well, we've had a really good conversation today about first aid and equipment. And I want to thank Dr. David Powers today for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, David, what is your website? Can you give that out?
My website is drdavidpowers.com. So you can find me there.
All right. And you need to really go there. Check out what he's doing. He is a huge help with counseling, with emergency medical training. He's a very good asset, a friend that you need to make. And you're going to learn a lot about coffee by following his blogs too. I'm not a coffee drinker yet, but I will be pretty soon. Well, this has been the Patriot Prepper Show. I'm Duke Nukem. I appreciate everybody listening today and tuning in. We'll be back next Thursday and every Thursday right here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Have a good day.
I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Looking good out there through the